Today is Sunday, September 16th, 2018, and this is Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of your Boston Celtics. Evan Valenti filling in for Adam Kaufman here on this Sunday in episode 280, featuring the Athletics' Jared Weiss, is brought to you by Casper. Go to Casper.com/Celtics. Use the promo code Celtics to get $50 off select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply. Episode 280 is also brought to you by Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. And in Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, Aaron Baines. Ask for my man Roy. He'll hook you up. That was Hayward's barber, by the way. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction to the hundreds of thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company, 113 Salem Street in the North End. But before we even get into some Celtic stuff, I just want you're kind of you're a man of many trades. I'd say you have like a lot of interests, and I think you have some of. And then you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Jared. You have some of an interest in like the tech world.
Sure.
Did you watch the Apple event the other day? What was it, Wednesday?
I was able to watch like half of it.
Yeah.
I tuned in for the home court demonstration. If that's
where I'm headed. What we got to figure out what shooting app or device we're going to go with, like the Steve Nash app. I saw this like shooting cube thing that is like one of the most outrageous things of all time. You have Al Horford's family has an app on the phone that you can also download and get on your phone to make you a better shooter. What are we going with as a group of people? Because we should all get on the same boat, I think, same page.
I mean, I'm a home court dude. It's the technology behind it's pretty remarkable that they use AR to identify anchor points on your body just by filming you. I mean, that kind of technology is really revolutionary, and props to Apple for really pushing it out there. It's like they said that this was going to be their thing when they were pushing out the iPhone X, and it really took off. And at first, when they first started doing it, the apps that they had out there were like you could put your camera, or you could like point the camera places in the room and you'd see like little dinosaurs and like stupid stuff like that, or cool stuff like it can measure stuff in your room. But now it's like actual physical performance being measured. The fact that not only could they tell you if you're making the shot or not, which I thought was really cool, but that it was doing something that we are able to do pretty commonly for golfers, where you have like TrackMan Pro in golf, where it like shows like all the data of like your launch angle and the speed that the ball's moving, the spin of the ball and all that kind of stuff. And now you can do that for basketball with that home court app. I mean, that's remarkable. It's a complete game changer for youth development, for training, it increases access to high-end training to pretty much anybody that can get an iPhone or get somebody who has a friend with an iPhone.
Yeah, it's not like the NBA or NBA teams haven't had something like this in place. Like the first thing I thought of when I was watching it was, can somebody get this to Marcus Smart ASAP, and maybe we can really fix the shooting problem? Maybe we don't need Drew Hanlon to fix Marcus Smart's shooting problem. We need Steve Nash in the app.
Actually, they have. The Celtics were the first team to use it, believe it or not,
really?
Back when it was in a beta stage. It was either them or the Sixers were the first.
I don't know that.
Oh, you know what? My Alexa doesn't know that, apparently. How do I turn off Alexa during a live podcast?
I don't know. But Alexa apparently doesn't even know if the Celtics were the first team to use it. And that's the one thing with the C's. Like, you've been around it, in much more than I have, obviously, because you're in the area and have been covering the C's forever, it seems like, at this point. But they are one of the not the pioneers, but one of the teams that uses technology to their advantage more than most other teams. At least started using it earlier. What are they? Can you give us a little inside scoop of what they might do in addition to that to kind of like bring this team into the 21st century?
Well, I mean, the Celtics have always been good about trying to be involved with a lot of applications that are being developed and wearables that are being developed. When Whoop is like a really popular wearable throughout the league that measures a lot of impact performance data that teams have been using for years now. And Brian Dew was it Brian Dew or Ed Lacert, the trainers, the previous trainers of the team, they were on the board of it. It actually was headquartered officially down the street from where I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, ironically, and was kind of developed in the area. So there's, a lot of Boston has kind of positioned itself as a Silicon Valley East. So there's been a lot of wearables and athletic training technology being developed here. And the Celtics have been investing in a lot of those companies or have been involved with the development of a lot of those companies. So it's allowed them to get early access to beta testing and kind of designing those applications.
Yeah, I think it's Bidu that's actually the head of one of those companies. He's got his hands in a couple of different things actually, and I miss Brian. Brian he was a great just personality to have on the sideline and have like his custom handshakes with Kyle Olynyk or his stuff with Legend. You know what I mean? Like to have your trainer have like a personal handshake with everybody on the bench shows you how much he's loved by the organization. But they've obviously turned things around and gone a different direction. Jared, let me get your opinion on this because I think we've been in this for a bit, but in your estimation, when did we finally or officially hit there's nothing going on and we have to talk about something because the NBA has become a 12-month-a-year sport? Like, this whole debate over the starting lineup is driving me nuts. This whole argument over the top 100 players in the NBA, like, oh, Al Horford's ranked one spot higher than Kyrie Irving. Let's debate that till we're blue in the face. Like, I am just so ready for the season to be here. And in your estimation, Jared, when did we finally hit that, like, we literally are running out of things to talk about stage?
Usually it's the second week of August is where like there's no more fallout from moves that are happening anymore. And that's what we're getting to that point that we're getting desperate for content. And I mean, this offseason has managed to still fill everything. I mean, we have the Jabari Bird case that we're going to get to a little bit later. There's, always rumors of Kyrie going to the Knicks, which are actually pretty legit as far as I'm concerned. So
you think they are? You think that's legit?
I think they are, but I don't think he's going to do it. But I think that there's a clear draw for him towards the Knicks.
Because he's from New Jersey? Is that what? Or he played high school basketball in New Jersey?
Yeah, he values New York a lot, more in a unique way. But so this offseason I think was pretty entertaining throughout, and we maybe had a 2-week period where it was completely quiet, which was great because I was on vacation for a lot of that period. And I'm glad I got to enjoy it. But by once Labor Day comes, the teams, the players start coming back. They start doing media appearances, and that's when things start to slowly rev up. So that started happening last week. So we're just kind of in that point now where like these guys are making public appearances, and you're going to have a lot more content just coming out of that. And then, credit to all the guys on Twitter for starting the lineup debate because that became a big thing. And there were beat reporters on that were taking cues from that because I had to skip Hayward's press conference because I was working the Jabari case at the courthouse all day. But apparently somebody actually asked him about whether he feels like he's going to be in the starting lineup. I don't know where that came from, but there's a lot of reporters out there that'll take their cues from whatever the Twitter debate is. So I can't remember who started that debate, whether it was like Bernardoni or Kungu or one of those guys, but they did their job. They definitely did their job.
Well, I mean, Celtics basketball, we're all starving for it because, again, we only got 5 minutes of real, like, actual, this is what this team is supposed to look like basketball. And then when Gordon went down, it's been just kind of the tease ever since. And we're all sitting here waiting with bated breath for Gordon to come back. And he had his press conference. He mentioned it at the new practice facility, right? They did it. They did the new one, and they had all 18s all over the place, and everybody's focused for this year. Have you there's been the rumor out there that he has played 5-on-5 a couple of times. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I think he got involved with a couple runs with Drew Hanlon. So yeah, he's played some 5-on-5. I don't know how extensive those runs were. So I think that's definitely a big variable there. It's one thing if you can play 5-on-5 for 10 minutes, no problem, or play to 11 or play to 21, but playing a full, 48-minute game is obviously a lot different because he's probably going to have his conditioning is not going to be where he wants it to be. Probably, he might be dealing with soreness in the ankle that's going to flare up from playing extensive minutes, which is why I wouldn't. I don't know I don't know what their plans are, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's on like a 20-minute limit for the first month of the season or something along those lines. So, you shouldn't expect Gordon Hayward to be like, you shouldn't expect the first play of the season is going to be him going up for an alley-oop. It's like they're going to have to pace it a little bit. and they're probably not going to play him until he feels that he can do everything on the court that he wants to do. But I expect him to get there by the start of the regular season. It just might be that they have to hold him back a little bit and not play him 30 minutes a night.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to really play anybody 30 minutes a night if they can avoid it. I mean, that's the one thing about this team is going to be depth, and we'll talk on that in a little bit. But I mean, everybody's ecstatic for Gordon Hayward to come back at this point. We're all just, again, when you pictured what they looked like and when you saw them in the preseason, and they again, the stories you read and the quotes you hear about how they had a great training camp before they even got into the preseason. And the preseason, I went to that first game at the Mullen Center at UMass. They played the 76ers. And I was sitting with Lucky's Pipe, actually. We're sitting there watching the game, and I'm like, man, this team is operating at a level that I did not think they'd be operating at the first preseason game of the year. When Gordon does come back, I do think he'll get eased into things. I think this is the perfect team for him in terms of depth on the wing to again, ease him in and get him good 20 minutes, 25 minutes, but not strain him a little bit. And when I see Gordon come back, like the first thing I'm looking for is confidence, like cutting in the basket, and how confident does he look there? And is he schemish? Can he explode off both feet? Does he explode off one feet? That's what I'm looking for. When he hits the court for the first time, Jared, what are you looking for? What are you looking to see if he's really that 100% back as he's claiming to be potentially?
I guess the big thing is, like, is he going to drive into traffic? Will he drive at a player under the rim? Is he going to go up for rebounds? Things along those lines. It's how much is he willing to go out into the air and put himself up the chance? So those I think are the main areas of hesitancy. Of course, if he's able to do like a hard crossover out of a cut where he's really planting his right foot and really stretching it out, really testing that ankle. Those are the things that you're looking for to see if he can handle. But like running up and down the floor isn't an issue. He's also, to his credit, he's kind of like a smooth gliding type of mover. He's not somebody that's doing like hard staccato movements or is like trying to like stop and start really hard just to throw somebody off and break their ankles and that kind of thing. He's someone that kind of likes to smoothly glide around a corner, kind of take, curving angles towards the hoop. So it's more conducive, I think, to recovering from an ankle injury because, it's not like he's Derrick Rose who had those severe knee injuries and then had to go back to being this like super, hyper movement player. His game is more conducive to recovering from this.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And he's not Derrick Rose. Prime Derrick Rose was the guy that just attacked the basket relentlessly and used a lot of his explosion and athleticism to get there, and then would finish with just absolute authority. And it's one of the saddest cases in recent NBA history of him just kind of falling off a table and off a cliff, so to speak. Quick break from Jared Weiss to tell you guys today's show is brought to you by Casper. Casper is a sleep brand that makes expertly designed products to help you get your best sleep one night at a time. You spend 1/3 of your life sleeping. Why be uncomfortable? Casper products are designed with you in mind. Everything they make supports any type of body. Not sure what mattress is right for you? Start with the original Casper. With over 20,000 reviews, it's quickly becoming the internet's favorite mattress. The Casper is equipped with multiple supportive memory foams, and it regulates your body temperature throughout the night. And Casper sells you more than just mattresses. They also sell sheets and pillows to ensure a better overall sleep experience. They do it all at affordable prices because they sell directly to you. And you can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free Sleep On It trial. If you don't like it, no sweat, free shipping and returns to customers in the U.S. and Canada. What are you waiting for? Get $50 off select mattresses by going to Casper.com/Celtics. Use that promo code Celtics at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. And one more time, $50 off select mattresses by going to Casper.com/Celtics and using that promo code Celtics at checkout. Back to Jared. Like, again, I when it comes to Hayward, like, I know people are going to be super excited as soon as he hits the floor, but you have to temper expectations a little bit. But I think that this whole other narrative that people are forgetting how good Gordon Hayward was, I don't know if I'm getting that. Like, I think, some people are, the people that I listen to are in that direction. Like, I don't think we're forgetting how good Gordon is. When you add a guy like this to a roster that's already loaded, like, it's just, they're going to win 60-plus games, no problem, no sweat, as long as there aren't any injury problems with the guys that they've already had. But, like, with Gordon, what does he add when he comes back? A guy that can space the floor, A, that can run their offense, B, and is a really good defender, C. So he's basically, legitimately, the perfect wing player for this system. And again, I can't wait to see what he looks like when he comes back. Speaking of, can't wait to see what it looks like. One of our favorite players, at least one of my favorite players in the NBA right now, Jason Tatum, in year 2. Like, what does he have when he comes back? Jaylen Brown, year 3. That, I think, is more important to long-term future of this team than Gordon Hayward. Am I crazy on that?
No, I mean, those guys they're hoping that they can evolve into top 20 players. You can make an argument that Hayward probably is already a top 20 player. In fact, I think I'm pretty sure Rob Mahoney basically said he was in his write-up for the SI Top 100, but because of the injury, placed him outside of it. So, yeah, I mean, Tatum obviously looks like he is projecting towards being a top 10 player potentially at some point in his prime. And I think people seem to quickly say that Tatum is clearly better than Jaylen Brown. I covered the team last year, and I watched everything that they did, and I talked to them about it, pretty much everything that they did. And I think that both of those players are pretty even. You know, Tatum is a rookie, so you have that advantage. But, I mean, Jaylen Brown is a really good all-around offensive player. He isn't quite the ball handler that Tatum is pretty, I'd say pretty comparable as a shooter, although Tatum is statistically better last year. I think they're pretty close. And he can finish. I think his finishing capability is actually probably right there where Tatum is now. But Jaylen moves better off the ball than Tatum does. And then as a defender, Jaylen's a better defender at this point. He's a better on-ball defender. So it's like both of those guys have, both of them could be top 10 players. They definitely could. And maybe the ceiling's a little bit higher with Tatum just because his all-around offensive game is a little bit more potent. But like those are the two guys those two guys right there could be the foundation of a title contender for the next decade or so. And Hayward is like the ultimate glue guy. And I always go back to, I think it was Shannon Sharp that was calling him a role player. Or maybe they were calling Horford a role player. I can't remember, but they're both like similar in this regard.
He called out Hayward for it, and I played the clip. It was a Celtics Beat a couple of weeks ago. I played the clip in pieces. I stole that actually from Adam Kaufman. He does that a lot, and I think it's a great thing to do. So I played like bits and pieces of his monologue there, where he was talking about how Hayward isn't like he's a role player. I'm like, yeah, a role player that he's good at everything. Like he is a superb role player. And then if you look at it this way, like the entire Celtics team is a team of quote unquote role players outside of Kyrie. Like Kyrie's the only quote unquote like superstar on the team, but they're high end role players, which makes them super. Like, isn't Klay Thompson a role player then? If that's the definition we're going with.
Yep, that's exactly it. So. And I think that's a good distinction, but it's not necessarily false. It's that basically to a layman like Sharp, who's not like an NBA expert, that pretty much any player who isn't an elite scorer is a role is a role player. And so Hayward is actually a really good scorer. He could be a 22-point scorer in Utah the year before. So like he is a top tier scorer, but he's not necessarily like a remarkable game breaking scorer, but he just does a little bit of everything very, very well. So in a way, he is kind of like a role player in that he could fit into pretty much any role and he can kind of just give the team what they need. Just like Horford. Horford is like the ultimate role player imaginable. Horford isn't a scorer, and I think this applies way more to Horford really than it does to Hayward, because Hayward can still get you 20 whenever he wants and does it very frequently, while Horford doesn't very often do it. But it's like with Horford, he's doing all those little things, kind of really epitomizing what a role player is, but he does it at an all NBA level. He does it at a level where he's basically like a top 15 player in the NBA. And, nowadays, Draymond Green is the exact same way. Draymond Green's scoring numbers aren't that great, but Draymond Green is obviously one of the best players in the NBA. We're just finally at the point in our understanding of basketball where we can appreciate role players as being the most important players, because as part of a balanced ecosystem, you have your elite scorers like Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kyrie Irving, complemented by guys like Hayward and Horford that does every other thing to make sure that they cover their bases and are actually like the perfect offense.
Yeah, and I find it funny that people criticize Hayward for like being good at everything but not great at one thing. But I'm like, even with that, like you hear about how his 3-point percentage is
could be improved. Again, we have to see it. But whenever you work with Drew Hanlen, usually your 3-point percentage tends to go up. And again, it's a guy that sees the floor very well. His IQ's huge. So I'm thrilled that he's back to 100%. Has set his feet on an NBA floor. Has taken shots. Has run a couple of whether it's again like you said, first to 21 or 11, or actually played some like 10 minutes of 5-on-5 action. That's spectacular. I think Nicole Yang on Twitter tweeted out the other day that he's played. It was during that press conference that you were at, the Jabari Bird thing, and we'll get to that in a second. But she tweeted out that he had played 4 games of 5-on-5, which is awesome.
Another break from Jared to tell you today's show is also brought to you by Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. And in Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, Aaron Baines. Boston Barber Tattoo Company is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction to the hundreds of thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. And they have a cappuccino bar and back. Check it out. It's awesome. Go down there, 113 Salem Street in the North End, and it's Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Back to Jared.
The Jabari Bird stuff is really messy, and I wanted to get half the podcast out of the way just so we could kind of do a lot on this. And you were at the press conference. I think you were the first person to tweet out the actual like court documents of what the official like charge from like the police report and all that stuff. Take us through what the past couple of days have been like for you, trying to get leads on this story, try to break everything down and figure out what the hell's really going on here.
Yeah, so I mean, this was just going back to when the DA first announced the plan for the charges. The thing that was really confusing at first was that what the charges that they announced of the listing of like kidnapping, strangulation, domestic assault. So the category of, if you go to like the Massachusetts state website, the category for overall domestic abuse is that's like the header for it. So when I saw that, I was assuming that they're going to file a assault battery against a household member charge under this category, and that it's not going to be as severe as what was actually listed there. So I thought that was going to be a misreporting. And then, as the week went on, I started to hear actually that it really is all of those charges, and it's actually a lot more severe than you're expecting. Because when we hear a domestic violence issue or an event, it tends to be like that, like it was like that they started slapping each other, or that they were pushing each other, and there was grabbing, and the victim got bruised, or like the Willie Reed case where he dragged his wife by the hair, and I don't think he was beating on her necessarily, but just was like obviously assaulting her, but just it wasn't like a very violent attack necessarily, but I could be wrong. I don't remember the details well, but you don't expect it to be a severely violent attack. And then you read the details of the case in Jabari Bird, and it was so gruesome and graphic and disturbing. This is not a standard domestic assault. This is a systematic torture, basically, over the course of 4 hours, based on what the victim has said. And it's very important, just at the outset, to acknowledge that while we do give the benefit of the doubt to the victim who is making the accusations, these are allegations. Everything contained in the police report about what occurred during the attack is what the victim was telling the police officer, and Bird at least gets the benefit of the doubt of due process. So there will be due process here, and hopefully we'll be able to get truth and evidence out into the open to know what actually happened. And Bird is claiming that there's another side to the story. It's really hard to imagine what the other side to the story is. But what she said was that over the course of 4 hours that they were going through, they were in a fight because he was having trust issues with her. And she also, to note even at the outset to set the frame for this event, is that she says that he's been dealing with anxiety issues. So, and also another important variable is that he was drug tested and it came back negative. So a lot of the stuff that seems like it's some sort of massive bipolar episode that you could think maybe it was because of drugs, he tested negative for drugs. So this was just purely from a mental rage trigger from him. So he grabbed her by the neck and then slammed her head into the wall, which is why he's being charged with assault with a deadly weapon, because he was smashing her head into the wall. And the doctor's examination seemed to corroborate this. They don't say that specifically, but they note that she had internal bleeding behind her ear, bleeding in her ear, her eye was bloodshot, seems to indicate that her head was slammed into the wall. And then over the course of 4 hours, which would asphyxiate her and suffocate her by grabbing her by the throat, wait until she would start to pass out, give her a few minutes to catch her breath, and then would start choking her again, which is, torture as far as I'm concerned. But in this legal case, is strangulation and assault and felony assault and battery. And so that's really disturbing. This isn't like you're in an argument and it gets a little physical and you all of a sudden just snap and you hit them. This is a systematic torture over the course of 4 hours, which is very, very disturbing, and disturbing at a unique level that I think this is going to be treated different than any case that we've seen in recent memory. And it's the thing that really made me pause and take a minute, because it was just really disturbing. And so over the course of the 4 hours, it says that according to the victim, he was strangling her about a dozen times, or Bard would strangle her about a dozen times in this manner, and that at one point she completely lost consciousness, which means that she was close to dying. I think it's takes 30 seconds of strangulation usually to make someone pass out, and then about a minute to a minute 30 to actually kill them. So it wasn't that far from actually murdering her or choking her out to the point that she could have had brain damage and it could have been a life-ruining event. So, I mean, the fine line here between hers apparently not having any severe injuries that we know of at this point, although they were according to the police report, they were still waiting for the results of a CAT scan upon the time that the report was written, but it appeared that she didn't have any serious injuries. And then so going back to where we were before, so apparently she woke up from underneath his bed, poked her head out, and she claims that he grabbed her and then started kicking her in the stomach repeatedly. And we don't know if she suffered any sort of severe injuries there. It wasn't mentioned in the report yet.
Yeah, it's just, it's terrible. Like, I can't even listen to you list off all this stuff anymore. It's awful.
I'll jump ahead because it really is painful.
Yeah, I'm getting sick just listening to it. And I mean, I like you, Jared, trust me, but I can't listen to it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, man, I cover the Celtics. I cover basketball. And while it was really fascinating and kind of exciting and interesting covering court for a day, this topic was devastating.
Yeah, and you saw the Celtics, the statement they released, I thought was one of the best statements we've seen from a team in this sort of scenario. Like, I mean, how many times do we have to watch the NFL and college football botch this and just basically throw out a press release that it makes it seem like they don't care. Like, the first line of the Celtics statement is we are deeply concerned and for the victim in this entire thing, which I thought was, again, great. Thinking of somebody else for once is something that's really great. And it's gross. It's disgusting. I'm glad that, the Celtics have taken steps to make sure that she's going to be okay. And then letting, the league and law enforcement kind of figure this out and help when they need to do so. Like, whenever they need to, lend a hand here or there, they're obviously willing to help that out. In terms of, what is the next step for the Celtics? There's just no way. I mean, look, I don't know what the steps are, and you and I talked about this earlier. Maybe you can help me through this. Jabari Bird cannot be on the roster anymore. I don't really care how this ends up happening. He can't be on the roster anymore. I know he's got some sort of side of his story, but this is gruesome stuff. All the stuff that has come out seems to be corroborated with the medical report, as you went through in great detail. Jared, he can't be on the roster anymore. It's just disgusting. And I understand we're in an era of what is a good conversation about mental health. In the NBA specifically, the Jackie Mack stuff that came out earlier this summer was just a great foray into that particular segment. We've seen DeMar DeRozan talk about it. We've seen Kevin Love talk about it. This is a real big issue, not just in football, but maybe in sports altogether. And maybe the NBA taking a stance on this and saying, yeah, these guys, we have to make sure our guys are not only in great physical shape, but in great mental shape as well. So instances like this, we can avoid future instances like this, because none of this stuff should be tolerated at any level, whether it's basketball, football, life in general. This is this is terrible stuff to hear. And if you're the Celtics, you have to find a way to distance yourself from Jabari. But from what I can gather from you, because again, you were kind of educating me before this podcast started, like, this is going to get a little messy here.
Yeah, I wouldn't go with messy, but they're generally not supposed to cut the player right away. And you can make exceptions to that. And, an interesting one that I remember is Aaron Hernandez. And if you're someone that lives in New England, I think everybody remembers when they heard the news that Aaron Hernandez was getting cut, and there was some sort of weird, mysterious, just like angst around it. There was just something wasn't right. And then 3 hours later, he was being arrested for murder. And, this isn't a murder charge, but like I detailed before, it could have gotten very close to being murder. I mean, this was an extreme, heinous act, allegedly. It's very important that we maintain allegedly, because he is entitled to the due process here to defend himself in whatever context he wants to claim. I don't even know what that's going to be. Maybe they're going to claim that it was like a BDSM thing that went out of hand. Definitely doesn't sound like it. It sounds way more severe than that. So whatever the case may be, the new domestic violence policy, I think a big part of the goal of that was to centralize authority and standards to the league office, so that the league office didn't have to be at the behest of teams trying to decide how they want to respond to this, so that they could be hyper aggressive in responding. Now, the only other case we have under the domestic violence policy is Willie Reed, who was with the Clippers, got in a fight with his wife who wanted to divorce him, and dragged her by her hair and hit her. She did not press charges. He entered the domestic violence treatment program, was fully cooperative in the program, and so at the end of the program, they levied what was only a 6-game suspension on him, which I think people were frustrated with, but at the same time, he cooperated with the program, and the program seemed to work, and so I thought it was fair that they gave him a reduced sentence, frankly, because he cooperated fully in the program. Now, Bird maybe will be entered into the program and cooperate, but I think the severity of the crime he's being accused of is at a different level than what Reed was being accused of, because of how systematic of an assault it was over a long period of time, that you can't use anger management necessarily as an excuse for this. This was some sort of much more disturbing, deep-seated attack, allegedly, based on what's out there right now. And then the risk of that it posed to the victim's life was just apparently much more severe. So I think that's the kind of thing where Silver, from my understanding of the policy, Silver has completely broad powers to impose any sort of act, including expulsion from the league. Now, expulsion from the league seems to be intended for repeat offenders under the policy, but I don't believe in my reading of the policy that it necessarily requires it to be a repeat offender, and it could just be a severe case where the act is detrimental to the reputation of the league, and I wouldn't be surprised if they exercise that on him. Now, he has to be convicted, I believe, for them to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So they have to wait, but the league is allowed, Commissioner Silver is allowed to impose an indefinite leave of absence. In the meantime, if they feel that, so the leave of absence, I believe, is they're allowed to do so if they feel that him participating in the league would cause severe reputational damage to the league. But I think it's also that it has to be that it would not interfere with his ability to mount a fair defense for himself in the court of law. And I don't believe imposing a leave of absence would do that. So I think this commissioner has the right to do that. He's imposing a leave of absence on himself, which of course could just be that the commissioner or the team told him we're gonna suspend you or force you into leave of absence. You might as well just save face and do it yourself. So maybe that's what the case is. And his agent, Aaron Goodwin's really smart and knows exactly what he's doing. They hired Nixon Peabody for a law firm, which is one of the biggest law firms in the city and the country, really. You know, his lawyer is an elite lawyer. His lawyer actually was the number 2 prosecutor on the Whitey Bulger trial a few years back. So,
okay. Yeah, decent
so
gotta have in your corner.
So he is a really big time lawyer. So they know exactly what they're doing. And it's true. The best thing for him is to take a leave of absence, because for him, this is not about saving his NBA career. I mean, the charges against him are so severe, he could be going to prison for decades if he's fully convicted. And the evidence that we have now has nothing on the detective's investigation of what they found at the scene. If they find a mark on the wall, they can have enough, they probably could have enough evidence right there to prove that he did assault her with a deadly weapon and impose a 10-year penalty if they can convict on that charge right there. And not to mention the whole discovery process could lead to a plea agreement where he pleads out and gets 5 years in prison just for that, where he probably gets out for 2 years after time served and good behavior and whatever. But the point is, like, he's facing a really serious threat of jail time here. It really comes down to whether or not the witness, the victim, is willing to be a cooperative witness. That's how it tends to come down in these situations. And we have no idea how that's going to play out. Hopefully she will be, so that, she could be protected and justice could be served in this case. But you never know how that's going to play out. And if that doesn't play out, then maybe Bird ends up finding his way back into the league. And then the commissioner has to decide whether or not they want to ban them from the league. And it's really hard to ban somebody from the league if they've been acquitted on charges.
Yeah, and again, the key phrase there is making sure she's a cooperative witness to make sure this all goes, somewhat smoothly here. It's disgusting to talk about, it's disgusting to think about, and but it's something we have to talk about. It's something like, this is the biggest storyline we've had, and it's really the only negative storyline we've had of the Brad Stevens tenure of the entire, like.
There's Solinger. Don't forget, Solinger was arrested for assaulting his girlfriends.
That's right. I forgot about that.
But you know why you forgot about that? Because she didn't want to press charges, didn't cooperate as a witness, and it disappeared really quickly.
Yeah, well, there's the Avery thing that came out right after I think he got traded, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't remember the timeline on that.
It was pretty soon after he got traded. The one thing I will say about that is, while I don't know anything about the case in particular, and while it's of course very possible that he did sexually assault this person, it has been happening for a long time that people will threaten a player to falsely claim that they were sexually assaulted, and then get the player to provide them hush money so that they don't have their reputation stained by that. So obviously I have no idea what the case is here, but I think it would be unfair to just assume he's guilty just because there was a settlement that got leaked out.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to assume anything if you don't know the answers to anything. That's true.
And there's no evidence there. While at least we have all of this evidence here in the Bird case, enough for us to, be able to start to formulate some sort of
make grand proclamations about, the rest of his career, the rest of his life, so to speak. We can somewhat extrapolate as to what's going to happen here. I'll get you out of here on this because this seems to be the most, buzzworthy topic the past, couple of days. Is, a lot of people are assuming at this point that there will be an open roster spot when Jabari Bird, if and when or however this happens. Like, if there's a lot of people are assuming there's going to be an open roster spot in the near future because Jabari, it doesn't seem like he should remain on the team in any capacity. And the big rumor is Jamal Crawford is a guy that's out there potentially that could fill that spot for the season. Bring a veteran off the bench who can help some of the younger guys, a good shooter, zero defense, but a guy that can be a microwave off the bench, a la Gerald Green, but even be better at that, more efficient at that. Do you think they would go, let's just speak in hypotheticals here, Bird's gone, there's an open spot. Do you think they'd go there or keep that spot open and wait for the buyout market?
It's a really good question. I think they need the depth because you saw last year how vital depth is.
But they have a ton of it already. You know what I mean? Like, they already have just a mountain of it. I mean, look at their top 9, top 10, top 11 guys. They're all, like, even Shemi Ojeleye, who people are going to forget about during the season because he's not going to play a ton. Like, he got really valuable minutes last year in crunch time of the playoffs against, like, Giannis. And he's going to come back in year 2 with a full offseason under his belt and be, that defensive wing stopper they might need in that second unit to just come in and give him a spell.
But what I'm saying is that they really learned last year how valuable having every single roster spot filled is, because there were times where Shane Larkin was the starting point guard and he was like the 4th point guard on the roster. So filling that spot is really important, but also at the same time, you don't need to fill it right away. You can fill it when you need to fill it. So I like the idea of them waiting for the buyout market. I think it mostly really depends on whether what they want to do with the luxury tax, because you can fill that roster spot and then cut the player at the end of your bench if you want to, and then go attack the buyout market. Or you could trade a player into space or into a trade exception. I mean, there's a lot of options. So I don't think keeping the roster spot open for the buyout market is necessary, but it is the easiest way to do it. You know, they did it last year and it worked out really well for them, because they were able to pounce on the guy that they wanted. I don't think Greg Monroe ended up being the player that they were hoping he would be for them, although he did provide some value at certain points, but it was pretty inconsistent. But they at least were in position to pounce on the player that they wanted, and they got him. So, there's that. But, Jamal Crawford he's really valuable for playoff teams who they just want to have somebody to carry them for a couple minutes in the third quarter or something like that. And I think he could still do that to a certain degree. But this is probably going to be the last year of his career. He's getting really close towards the end there. I know that there is mutual interest between the Celtics and Crawford. That I do know. The Celtics didn't make an offer to him. He's been kind of waiting for the right situation to materialize. That's why he's holding out to training camp basically. I think he wants to be in a position to win a championship, and so he wants to sign on with one of these title teams. I don't know if he's willing to wait all the way until the buyout market season opens, but maybe he'll latch on with the team, and there's plenty of teams that'd be happy to have him. But I think Crawford wants to be on a title winner because he knows his career is pretty close to the end. And, the team is always looking for more 3-point shooting. That's always something that they're going to value. They have a good amount of it, but they always could use more, and they probably do need more. And Crawford's somebody that when you look at their bench, Rozier is the only guy that's a good, ball handler that can also shoot the ball, that I can think of off the top of my head. I guess Morris, you could probably give that to as well. And then Wanamaker, we'll see. He should be, but we'll see how he performs. I don't really have a baseline expectation for him yet.
The Athletics, Jared Weiss. That'll do it. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, man.
And that'll do it for this episode of Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of your Boston Celtics. Today's show powered by Casper and by Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. A couple of thank yous to hand out. Jared Weiss, of course, from The Athletic, my guest for today. Also, Adam Kaufman, who'll be back next week. Nick Gelso, the CEO of the network. Larry H. Russell. John Zanis as well. A big thank you to you guys. You guys continue to be the greatest people of all time, right? I mean, it doesn't get any better than you guys, that's for sure. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and on Stitcher, and follow us along on YouTube, CLNS Media on YouTube. We post a bunch of stuff there, Celtics related, all the press conferences, all, if Garden Report, you name it, Celtics related, we got it. Okay, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We'll see you guys next week right here, Celtics Beat on CLNS Media.